Right now on Tech Radio, Irish moon trip cancelled.
Hi, I'm Artemis. I am a computer-generated AI voice, and you're listening to Tech Radio.
Every week online and on air with RT Radio, we bring you the latest in tech from Ireland and around the world. You're welcome to episode 1022, looking back on the 7 biggest stories of the week, including Intel selling up in Ireland, the cancelled Irish moon trip, and some mixed news on mixed reality. Plus, in our guest interview, we have a great chat lined up with Austin Boyle at Accenture about AI, and that is one company that really knows their AI stuff. So let's get to it.
From TechCentral.ie, this is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
I'm Dusty. Joining me as always is our editor-in-chief, Niall Kitson. Niall, let's get straight into the news of the week with Intel selling up.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a very alarmist way to phrase the story, but
that's my job.
here's the very short version, because to be honest, it's not a huge story, more of a so that's what's happening. Right. If you were to look at the the headline, it's effectively Intel sells part of its Leixlip plant. Right. So Leixlip's factory out there is called Fab 34. This is where they make the wafers behind their chips. It's a huge manufacturing facility. And what they have decided to do is sell 49% of the plant to an asset management firm called Apollo. Now, what does this mean for the average person? Nothing. What does this mean for staff? It means nothing. It's not going to affect hirings or firings or anything like that. Mm-hmm. Basically, what Intel has done is they have converted part of the plant into money, part of its actual wealth. So I think they've got like 11 billion. And they're going to invest that into the company's wider corporate strategy, right? So they've converted, I suppose, what's it called? Sweating the asset? When you use the value of an asset to do something else. So they retained ownership of it and operational interest in it. And it's just there happening away in the background. Is Apollo going to be something of an activist shareholder? No, not really. It's just they have bought into, I suppose, something to do with AI. AI is going to be really big in the future. They'll probably get a very tidy return on their investment. But where's the proceeds of this, inverted commas, sale going to its corporate strategy? So
Grant,
nothing to worry about.
No harm, no foul for you. I'm a little bit suspicious of it because of course I am, because I like conspiracy theories. You must have seen The Founder, have you? That movie with Billy
Michael Keaton.
That's it. About the McDonald's. And kind of like they were doing well as a burger chain and but they didn't start making real coin until they started buying the buildings. And actually now McDonald's business is real estate more than it is making burgers. So I'm a little bit suspicious that Intel have this facility in Leixlip, which they own, and now they're selling 49% of that asset. You're right about you use assets, not sweating the asset, but you're leveraging the asset. So you would leverage that 49% to be able to raise the money. But they've sold it to somebody.
Yeah,
admittedly, they're keeping
the reason
51%.
They've sold it is so they don't have to borrow the money.
All right. Okay. Look, it doesn't really affect me. So I'm kind of like, But anyway.
Yeah, it's more of a, it's like, share buybacks. It doesn't affect us, but it's interesting.
Okay, now speaking of share buybacks, we want to talk about our Japanese billionaire friend. MZ is what he's known as. I'm not even going to try and pronounce his Japanese name, but he has been to space before. I think he's been on the International Space Station. Don't remember quite offhand. But anyway, he had an amazing plan and he announced it in 2018, and we covered it before, where he was going to take himself and I think 8 other people for a trip to circumnavigate the moon. And this is all a deal done with Elon Musk, and they were hoping that the whole thing will be put in place by 2023. However, now it's 2024, just checking my watch. And he's just kind of, I get the impression, because he's a billionaire, he can do what he wants, that he's just kind of, do you know what? Nah, it looks like it's not going to happen. I'm bored. I'm out. Like a typical dragon.
You reckon that was it? Boredom?
I think that's what it was, because he said in his head, sorry, no, the angle and the reason we're interested in this is because of the 8 people that were going to go around the moon with him. There was a K-pop star, there was a music producer from the States, there was an Indian actor, and there was an Irish woman as well who is a photographer based in London. Rhiannon Adam is her name. She's originally from Cork. And they were all going to go on this trip. And the photographer, of course, was a hugely important part, because just the way they see things, I was about to say in the world, but of course we're talking about the moon. You know exactly what I mean. And what she might capture of the trip and everything could be very interesting. So they were all meant to go, and she would have been the first Irish person, definitely around the moon, and I think in space. But it's not going to happen now, because he's just kind of gone, look, this is meant to happen in 2023. Looks like it might not happen until 2033. I ain't waiting. Sad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you have a timeline stretched out that far, yeah, I'm sure, it's natural for frustration to kick in. I can understand why it'd be scuppered.
Yeah. The other thing, good news on the space side of things is Boeing Starliner has finally taken off. This thing is years and years and years and years behind in development, and then they were trying to launch, and there were all kinds of complications, both with the Starliner itself and with the rocket that it was going to go on. Because the Starliner is not the rocket. The Starliner is the capsule that the crew go into, and somebody else produces the rocket, and it's kind of a bit of a team effort. However, it eventually took off this week. 2 astronauts going to the International Space Station. They're going to spend a week there. One of the astronauts is the first female spacecraft test pilot, which I think is good. And then also, what struck me as, it was a little side note about the story. It was kind of like, the 2 astronauts are going up, blah, blah, and all this kind of stuff. And they're also bringing 300 tons of supplies. I'm like, basically, they're Tesco delivery drivers. And they're bringing the shopping.
They're bringing the shopping.
Did you order the chorizo? I have this here. Anyway, that was good, and I hope it goes well. I certainly hope they don't blow any doors out on the way back.
Oh, that's well, actually,
Boeing are having a bad
really,
old time of it lately. It just seems like everything is going wrong for them, and I'm an aviation guy, as you well know, so I kind of think it's a little bit sad, but it's not forgivable.
No,
I don't think.
No,
you need to get your act together.
Documentary on Netflix about Boeing, basically saying how, what was it? They relocated their corporate office to Chicago, and now they're so far away from their product. They're just looking at numbers coming in and looking, and have lost interest. Well, not lost interest, but the focus is on return for shareholders over building great product. Which, does that sound familiar?
Well, it's the same with every company. That is the purpose of a company, is to make a profit for its shareholders. So no bother with that, But I mean, that at that level with Boeing and with Airbus, I mean, just the scale of it is amazing. There was, I know somebody who is in the business, and they were explaining to me about the Airbus A380, which is the biggest aircraft in the world. Okay, it's the double decker. It's got 4 engines, all this kind of stuff. One of them was departing from New York on a 12, 14 hour flight. And as they took off, they realized that one of the engines had failed on takeoff. So they're going, all right, what we do about it? They weren't bothered in the slightest. All right, because as my friend says, he says, well, we have another 3 engines, so we're not bothered. It's kind of like, it's just that attitude. Anyway, long story short was, they rang back to base and they said, what we do? And they said, look, we'll get across the Atlantic and we'll see what we're going to do. They decided to do was they were going to land somewhere in Europe. When they landed in Europe, they had another A380 parked at the airport right beside where this one pulled up. Basically told the passengers to get off, get on the other one, sit in the same seat. They transferred across the luggage, and off it went. And the passengers were less than an hour late.
That's hilarious, but impressive.
It's very impressive. It's very impressive. Anyway, so there we go. Anyway, Boeing Starliner taking off moon mission cancelled, unfortunately. One little gadget that we had been playing with during the year, which we were excitedly looking forward to, and then got launched onto the market and didn't really get very good reviews, as in the news this week. Tell us all.
Yeah. You remember, I think this was it in December? This was announced, the Humane AI pin. And we sort of looked at it and went, actually, this is an interesting thing. This is a different way to present AI. It's got a nice kind of Star Trek kind of vibe to it. Let's give it a go. Unfortunately, we didn't get a review model. I think a lot of the reviewers out there would say, unfortunately, they did get one. Because the device itself wasn't very good. It wasn't responsive in the way that people wanted it to be. And the interesting things like the projected menu and stuff like that, they just didn't have enough sizzle to be interesting. So product did not go down well. Two bits of news to do with it this week. One is the company has said, please don't use the charge case anymore. Because it's overheating to a dangerous degree. Nothing has caught fire. It's just overheating. In return, people who subscribe to their service have gotten an extra 2 months for their troubles. It is unknown whether they will get a replacement charger. I don't know. Maybe that's an indicator of how well they see their service. Because that was one of the things. Like, it wasn't you didn't just buy the thing, you had to buy the service going with it. Kind of like, smartwatches or fitness devices or anything like that. This just didn't cut the mustard with people. So it looks like the owners are trying to, they want to sell up and they think they've got a great thing going. So how much would you pay for a company whose product seems to have been universally panned, and whose I do remember the weird presentation they had for it as well. This very weird, lifeless kind of blank expression. Our device is going to revolutionize AI.
Yeah. I mean, they were a little bit dry about it, but that didn't take away from the excitement. We love the idea of just a little thing on your chest, and you would just hit it. You would ask it a question, and it would come back. You go, "Hey, what's the temperature out here?" Boom, it'll tell you. You'd say, "How old is Barbara Streisand?" Boom, it'll tell you. And boom, what time's the next, H1 bus to Hoth? Boom, it'll tell you. The problem was that when it eventually came out and all the viewers got their hand on it, they go, "Hey, boom, what time is it?" And I'd go, "It's 2:10." It's kind of like, all right, okay. There's a bit of a gap there, though. This is not going to work. It definitely. I think it excited people, but when it came, it didn't just disappoint, but it was just so bad that it really got universally panned. I think there was a lot of love out for it. But anyway, it's up for sale now.
How much would you pay for that company?
I wouldn't give them my last euro. They've had such a terrible launch. Do you know what I mean? Like if you've got you would have to redesign it, rename it, the whole thing. Because who the heck wants to go near Humane AI pin now? What are they flogging it for? Anyway?
They reckon it's worth between $750 million and $1 billion.
Wow.
So what companies could actually afford that? I mean, you're looking at the likes of
Facebook,
the FAANG companies, basically.
Yeah,
Facebook,
all the biggies,
Amazon.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Netflix wouldn't be into it. Google, of course, seeing as they bought up, the Nest back in the day. With varying degrees of success. It's a very small pool of companies would be interested in a device like this, especially in its current form. So I mean, it is the kind of thing that I suppose I could see Google being interested in.
Quite possibly. I mean, 1 billion, that 1 billion is what Facebook paid for Instagram 10 years ago or whenever it was.
Yeah.
So 1 billion was worth a lot more than what 1 billion is now. So with all of look, unfortunately, we're heading towards the middle of the month and I'm a bit light. So I'm not interested in buying one. Thank you very much. I don't need a Humane AI pin company. Thank you very much. But listen, speaking of AI, some other good stories knocking around. I can't remember if we mentioned it last week, but Google AI was in the news because it's giving really strange responses to the whole idea is you put a search into Google and then it will give you an overview of what it is that you're asking for and then give you all the websites. So it's kind of like if you're asking, I don't know, where's the best place to stay in Rome and whatever. He'll say, oh, you're going to Rome. Well, you've got this place and this place, whatever, and you should stay in this district and this district and whatever. And then it'll give you all the links that you can go on. It's kind of a summary, if you like. But the problem was that sometimes it was giving very strange advice. I can't remember how it came about, but one of the pieces of advice that it was giving was to use non-toxic glue when you want to stick cheese to a pizza. All right.
Okay.
That kind of stuff. And the reason it was doing that is because Google have trained their AI on satirical websites like The Onion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, can you imagine, kind of training it on Waterford Whispers News, which is a great website, but I mean, their headline the other day was "Help Name Pat Kenny's New Jazz Group," which he has no interest in jazz or whatever, So I thought that was funny. Also, the big story this week then, not with Google AI, but ChatGPT giving again very confident answers that are all completely wrong. Sky News asked ChatGPT who won the UK general election in 2024. Ooh. Now, this is the election that's going to happen in 3 weeks' time. And ChatGPT's response was, Labour won the UK election in 2024 by a rather wide margin.
Ooh.
Hasn't even happened yet.
Hasn't even happened. So
exactly.
Does that mean we should start trusting ChatGPT with prognostication? I doubt it.
I think ChatGPT has been around long enough that we all know not to trust it. Certain things it does very well, but if it's giving you information on something, take it with a pinch of salt. You got to use your brain.
Like ourselves, really, when you think about it.
What you mean? We're not to be trusted, is it? Well, do you know what? You're probably right there. Do you know? I was at a keynote speech with the Adapt Centre. Vincent Wade, who was the former head of the centre, did a brilliant keynote on AI. And this is one of the things he was talking about. He said the AI will give you incorrect information, but it will give it to you so confidently and authoritatively and include so much detail and maybe even sources that you kind of go, yeah, okay, cool. He said, it's all completely made up. Yeah. I think that keynote is going to be a podcast soon. So if you're into that kind of stuff, check out Adapt Radio elsewhere on the internet. What else have we got going on in the news? Last story for today, a little bit of news with mixed reality, really.
A couple of mixed reality stories. We'll just mesh them all together and call them one story. So it looks like we have, or rather we are going to get a release date for the Vision Pro outside of the US. Apple's Vision Pro is, of course, their virtual reality headset, retailing for just under $3,500 in the States. So its market at the moment is basically developers to see what people will actually go out and do with it. We've all seen the viral clips of people walking around New York wearing these things. One of its key features being a way to diffuse that kind of sense that you're talking to somebody who's got a giant helmet on and isn't paying attention to you whatsoever. They've got this sort of pass-through function where it presents a picture of your eyes just to show that, yes, okay, listening, here we go, all that kind of good stuff. Does it solve a problem? I think it does. Well, I mean, does it solve it? It addresses it, I think is perhaps a better way to say it. So what has happened is that some Apple stores in England have already gotten their display, not display cases, but display stands for the Vision Pro. That's how we know it's definitely getting an international release. We'll know a bit more on the 10th of June at WWDC. I don't know. I'm surprised. I will be intrigued to see what the price tag will be on it, whether they think it will still be a niche device for the developers or whether it's time to actually get it into regular people's hands. I think it's probably still in development land, but we'll give it a go. Now, the second story is Microsoft is laying off people in its mixed reality division. Now, Microsoft is going through a round of layoffs at the moment. I think there's roughly 1,000 people going in its Azure business, and there is an unknown group of people going in its mixed reality business. Now, Microsoft, I suppose it's easy to say that mixed reality hasn't lived up to the hype that Microsoft had. And Microsoft's device, the HoloLens, actually has done very well at identifying the niches that it's good at and serving those. However, those niches are not in the consumer space. So you're looking at things like engineering, you're looking at things like medicine, perfect spaces for augmented reality devices that will pull apart problems and help illustrate or have solutions distributed. And that is exactly what they're there for. I don't know if that was, a trial and error discovery, or, somebody going, okay, let's see what we can do in these high end uses and then bring it down to the consumer space and see if it works there. HoloLens isn't going anywhere anytime soon. There is still support for HoloLens software in Windows 11, if memory serves. The main thing is it's not going anywhere. HoloLens isn't going anywhere. The team that has been working on it is being scaled down by unknown numbers. I think that's just a realization that HoloLens is never going to be mass market. It's going to be niche. And that's let's just cut our cloth to suit.
Interesting to see, because I was looking at a friend of mine who's got a MetaQuest 3. Okay, so I'm going over to have a look at it next week or the week after or whatever, to try it out. But just looking at some reviews and stuff like that online, it seems to do an awful lot of what Apple's Vision Pro does. So you're able to walk around. It's got cameras on the front, so it can show you the room that is around you. You can do all that kind of mixed reality kind of stuff. But what's the Apple one is about $3,500. This one is, I think, 700. So it's like kind of like a fifth of the price. Somewhere in around there. So I'll be interested to see what can be done with it. I've seen some, again, I'm an aviation dude. I've seen some videos on YouTube, and I'd love to try it out, of people flying flight simulators using this MetaQuest headset. So they're able to look around the cockpit and the aircraft and whatever, outside the windows and all that kind of stuff. How it works in reality, I don't know. But if it's good, I'm going to want one for Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
I'm warning you now.
You'll be surprised. You'll be surprised how little it takes to convince you that you are.
But I had one of those. Do you remember when it was one of the Samsung phones came out and they were just flogging off their virtual reality headset to go with it? I got that and it was amazing. And I got motion sickness trying out the roller coaster and everything. And it was very funny.
Oh,
I'd be able to kind of sit there and look around you if you're looking at static photos and that kind of stuff. Now things have moved on an awful lot. And I would imagine that the experience is a hell of a lot better. But it's kind of, maybe I'm thinking like Microsoft. I'm kind of thinking, well, where exactly is this going to fit into my life, or where am I going to use it?
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe I'm trying to think of where I would use it. I mean, would you sit down and play a virtual game of chess or cards or something like that with somebody else? And it looks like but without having this ridiculous, kind of avatar, kind of a cartoon version of yourself going on. Could it be a real life video recording of somebody else? And Google are doing something like that as well, where they've got this little booth you can sit in. You don't need a headset at all. It's all projected up on the wall. And it's like a 3D camera kind of a thing, which is quite good. But where would you use it? That's the question.
That's it. I mean, we hear all about, Apple's whole thing is, what was they call it? Spatial computing. Just adding depth to the UI. Does it? What's the benefit?
I know.
Cui bono, as they say.
Yeah, What was the other thing I did with the Samsung? Watched movies on it. This is a virtual cinema. So basically you put it on, you're able to watch a movie as if you were in the Savoy. I mean, Savoy 1 now on O'Connell Street, the big one, right? And it does get that effect. It looks like an amazing screen. But the problem is you've got 2 kilograms of equipment sitting on the bridge of your nose, which doesn't go down well. 20 minutes into the movie is like, I've had enough.
Not exactly unobtrusive.
Exactly. Anyway, we wait and see. I'll give you a full report when we're done on that. Listen, that is the news for this week. Niall Kitson, Editor-in-Chief at techcentral.ie. Thank you very much for keeping us up to date.
You're listening to Tech Radio 2024 from techcentral.ie.
Artificial intelligence comes in many flavors and can do many different things, whether it's automating processes, managing customer service queries, writing meeting summaries, or creating images and videos out of nothing. The technology is ready and waiting for everyone to either use or abuse. Austin Boyle is head of technology at Accenture, and he shared his thoughts on generative AI with Niall Kitson.
Austin, one of the tenets in your recent report has been human by design. So tell us a little bit about what that idea is.
Look, great to be here. Thanks, Niall, for having me on the show. Lovely to be here and to talk about our recent Tech Vision 2024 report that really delves into that concept of human by design. We've seen in recent years the advancement of technology, and we're really seeing now that technology is really driving a wave of reinvention that is impacting every part of the business. Emerging technology is becoming more human in its nature, creating unprecedented possibilities and in effect giving humans superpowers. As technology is evolving now, it's mimicking what we can carry out and what we can do in the real world. So we have to think about how we design that technology to work in more human ways, and then how we use that technology in business and in our day-to-day lives in that more human way. And this is moving really now a step change from when we would have adapted to technology starting to adapt to us and really working in this human type of way. And hence the report focusing in really on this concept of human by design.
So when we're looking at things that try to attain some level of, I suppose, convincingness when it comes to human interactions, naturally enough, we're looking at chatbots, which seem to have evolved quite a lot over time from being simple question and answer, can I help you with something? And if not, give me a ring back very quickly, to things that are a lot more sophisticated and a lot more, for want of a better word, confident in giving out information from less well-defined questions than before. Is this the kind of advancement in AI that we can expect to see, not so much over the long term, but certainly in the near term?
Yes, no, absolutely. I mean, the report we had talks about 4 key trends, actually, and we'll delve into those and pack them a little bit now. A match made in AI, which is really focusing into the chatbots, what you're talking about there, and I'll come back to now. Meet My Agent, the space we need, which is all around the kind of augmented reality and virtual reality that we will be operating in, and then our bodies electronic. In terms of what you were talking about there, Niall, and the chatbot evolution, right, and really looking at a match made in AI, we can see that as we explore how technology is starting to imitate how we process information, this is happening at a more rapid pace now and a greater understanding than ever before. These are not just superficial changes to the way we interact with technology, but really rooted in memory structures designed and organized in a similar fashion to people's brains, actually. The earliest changes that we're starting to see are in search, which you kind of talked about there, and will come in to disrupt the way in which we approach knowledge and knowledge management. And this takes us into that concept of the chatbot now, which is really around, having much more intuitive understanding of what it is we ask and giving much richer answers. So we as users have a much more fulfilling and richer experience. And as we get to use more and more data, and we get to harness that now in terms of the digital backbone that we have to enable the use of these chatbots, this will just become more and more prevalent and more sophisticated as time goes on.
That's interesting there that you're mentioning the point of data, because data is, of course, what is driving the development of large language models. Are we going to get to a stage where companies will build their own large language models on the basis of, the kind of conversations that are being had perhaps with clients or with their own CRM systems? What kind of sources are we going to be looking at? Because you can't be trolling Reddit forever.
Yes, that's true, indeed. Well, look, data is something I'm very passionate about, and data really is the fuel for Gen AI and for AI in general, right? But for Gen AI in particular. And organizations need to understand their data, because what's going to happen now is it's no longer going to be your product or your offering that is your differentiator, but actually your data and your understanding of the employee or the customer or the user, and how you give a very rich, differentiated, personalized experience to that user that's coming into the system. Data is going to enable that. So getting access to data is going to be fundamental to the success of this technology and how organizations use it. In terms of how you do that, then we talk about the digital core. And when we talk about AI, we really have three kind of areas that we're kind of recommending organizations focus in on. One is the value gap. Two is the readiness gap. And three is the responsibility gap. Now, all of those need data underpinning them in order to solve those issues. Value really being around getting clear value of the business case in terms of the solution you want to put in place and what's the return on any investment that's put in place there. Readiness is really around the technology landscape and how ready you are to embrace the technology. And that is to get access to data, because you're going to move from where you've had traditionally siloed systems that have been running independently and without maybe a cross, organizational view of the data, to a more unified platform that enable you to get that data across your enterprise that you can access to give that rich experience. And then there's the responsibility gap, which is really around how we implement solutions with Gen AI and deal with the data in terms of making sure it's accurate, dealing with hallucinations, and how we cater for that and having a responsibility guardrails in place in terms of how you access data. And that, I think, goes back to your question then in terms of, will organizations look at large language models, on-premise, or will they do them in the public cloud, or will it be a hybrid of everything? And we're seeing that rapidly evolving at the moment. Some organizations are looking at developing their own models, but if you're looking at developing a large language model, going back to the value that we're talking about, you need to have a very clear value case for that, because it's very expensive and computationally very intensive. But there are evolvements happening there radically. We're talking about small language models now, which are more precise and more targeted at particular use cases. And so how you put those models together and how you access them is what we're really starting to see now in 2024, as we've come out of 23, which is really around the evolution of, or the emergence of ChatGPT at an enterprise level and such technologies, and concepts of pilots and people experimenting with the technology, let's say, into now scaling it and really deploying it at a production level to really give enhancements and efficiencies to organizations.
Looking at where those gaps are appearing in organizations, it's very easy to point to the C-suite, to the boardroom, where you might have a lot of people saying, yes, let's do AI, let's do it now, but not really knowing what that entails at a technical level, at an ethical level, knowing the kind of sophistication that is required on their own part to understand the technologies that they want to make use of. Do you find that there is this, again, a gap between organizations accepting they need to embrace AI, but not sure how to do it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, our research shows that 9 in 10, Irish executives anticipate a medium to a high impact to their organization's business processes in the next 3 years. That's very imminent in terms of what's going to happen. So it is a question that is being grappled with at the C-suite level for sure. Less than 1 in 10 organizations are actually putting in place the structures and the mechanisms to enable deployment of AI technologies at scale, which is a huge chasm of where people's expectations are in terms of what the technology is going to do to actually making it real and making it happen. There's definitely a focus on this at the C-suite level, and it is imperative that the C-suite understands the implications of the technology and what that means for their business and how they have to retrain right from the C-suite down and have a clear data strategy, a clear cloud strategy, and link to that then an AI strategy for how AI will interoperate with their business and the various different processes they have in place in order to benefit the organization. A lot of C-suites are dealing with this right now at the moment. I would say there's different levels of maturity throughout different sectors of the industry, but it is accepted, it is known that it needs to happen. And that is key in terms of the talent workforce skills strategy an organization puts in place now, and to build trust actually in the organization. Trust is really fundamental to this because we've had change right throughout the generations and centuries of where we've had technology implemented. And if you think back to the days of when electricity was introduced, for example, there was huge skepticism around that and saying, death is all around us with electricity, right? And look how much what benefit it's been to society, the combustion engine, the same. So it's really important that leaders understand the technology and its impacts so that they can then put in place a clear talent strategy and ways of working to bring people on the journey and build that trust in an organization. That is really, really important because there's quite a lot of fear out there that jobs are just going to get replaced. And actually, our vision doesn't say that at all in terms of, yes, there will be disruption, but it's really augmenting humans. And that's kind of where it's human by design in terms of the technology to effectively give humans superpowers to be able to do things quicker and faster, and for humans to be able to look at different areas and more fulfilling work potentially, where a lot of the mundane tasks will be taken over by Gen AI.
And indeed, we've been exposed to the idea on the show of being, say, marked down in a university environment, not for using AI, but for not using it efficiently. So is this the sort of skill set do you think companies are going to have to embrace? Not so much, okay, here's AI, but here's the best way to use AI, or even perhaps, we will reward you for an efficient use of AI if it helps form, say, a company policy.
Oh, no, definitely. Organizations are now investing hugely. Ourselves and Accenture last year announced a $3 billion investment in terms of AI and our capabilities that we're evolving and developing around AI. And a big part of that is actually training our people in terms of how to use AI so they understand the technology, that we can bring those solutions to our clients to really give rich, meaningful solutions and outcomes to our clients that will help their organization. So absolutely, there will be a focus on this and for training people, and organizations that are out of the blocks quickly, shall we say, that are gaining that advantage are doing that right now. And that's going to be key.
Just to harken back to that point about chatbots, are chatbots all created equal now, or are we going to be looking at chatbots with specific competencies where, you won't necessarily have to engage with an all-purpose chatbot that might have maybe a limited understanding of a specific field of expertise? Or will we get to the point where it's, okay, we get to choose a chatbot that's particularly good at coding, we get one that's particularly good at management, we get one that's particularly good at some other skill?
Yeah, no, I think that's where you're going to see it evolve to now, right? Because part of doing that is actually putting in place the guardrails to control the technology and what it can do and can't do. Because if you were to unleash a large language model potentially and a Gen AI solution, it could give you a myriad of different answers, right? And we've seen examples where that has worked well, but we've also seen examples in industry of where that has not worked so well, in some very high profile cases in that regard. So I think you will see the emergence of models and chatbots that will be specific to, for example, operate as a customer service agent in the space of a utilities telco, for example. And it's constrained in the guardrails there in terms of how it interacts with you. Now, in terms of that industry, it will have access to all of the information within the organization that's relevant to the use cases that you're coming in to use it for, shall we say. And you will definitely see, I think, a proliferation of chatbots in that regard. And we're seeing a lot of it already. We're deploying it at scale, where we're looking at chatbots, given that more intuitive human interaction, taking away a lot of tasks from call centers. Call centers in particular are seeing huge benefits with this, and that it can divert and reduce a huge amount of calls that are coming in for relatively straightforward asks. And because it's a much more human interaction, the customer gets much more out of that. The responses are auto-generated in terms of if there's an email response, they're more accurate, better written English, etc. And then the customer's getting a better experience. So you're doing it cheaper. The customer experience is driving up satisfaction levels, etc. So it's a win-win all around. And then you've got capacity to deploy those people to other, maybe let's say more complex areas that can be solved quicker then for customers as well. So you definitely will see that specialization, I think, in chatbots and models.
Let's pick up that idea on the user experience, and in particular, one technology that is coming down the line that is entirely based on user experience as opposed to potentially capabilities, which is, of course, spatial computing, something that doesn't necessarily add anything that we can do in function, but changes the user experience completely. Do you think there's an appetite for spatial computing out there, perhaps in the realm of training, in the same way that perhaps VR is? Or do you think, the units are too expensive, the apps aren't there, perhaps the willingness to invest isn't there? Where do you see this technology going?
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting one, and we explore it actually in one of the trends in the tech vision, which is all around the space we need. And that's where we're watching the emergence of a new spatial computing medium and the applications taking advantage of its capabilities to pierce the physical digital divide. We had the saying, the metaverse is dead, long live the metaverse, right? A couple of years ago, we would have been talking quite a bit about the metaverse. And I would say, to your point, the devices and the peripheral devices that were there were probably, very expensive, a little bit clunky to use, and the experience wasn't there. And as a consequence, then it kind of hit a little bit of a roadblock, shall we say, in terms of its adoption. However, that said, we're seeing quite a lot of applications now, particularly within industry and in the learning areas for spatial technology, for sure, whereby, you can have engineers, field engineers that are using HoloLenses, etc., to look at manuals to make that experience much more rich and much more accurate, and not having to look at physical manuals that take much longer. You can have it from a point of view of a safety perspective in terms of using it to do remote tasks. Or even training, right? In the learning area, it's a huge capabilities and lots of developments that are happening there in terms of creating an immersive platform for people to be able to learn more intuitively and quicker. And I think now with, the access to the data and accessing Gen AI in the cloud and the computational power that's there, what you're going to see is really the spatial being the visualization of that AI capability and the data that's there at large volumes. So you'll see rapid advancements now in it. And I think there's probably a little bit of customer reticence in some areas in relation to that. We're seeing it starting to come into mainstream now. For example, there's lots of examples out there around, if you wanted to buy furniture, how you can overlay that on your room and see what the furniture looks like within the room, for example, in that augmented reality scenario. And there's absolutely production organization apps that are there now to do that and are being very effective. Similarly, in the fashion industry, if you want to go into a virtual showroom and try on clothes, etc., that's all starting to gain a little bit of momentum. And whilst a couple of years ago, that would have been, probably a little bit kind of futuristic and like aspirational. Now it's becoming much more plausible and actually will see rapid developments, I think, in the coming years.
One final point, and it speaks to something that you raised earlier, the eternal debate between public and private cloud, which doesn't seem like it will ever leave us. In looking at the arrival of new technologies, of Gen AI, of spatial computing, does this change the complexion of that debate at all? Does it add additional concerns over the kind of data that we're gathering and security thereof? Or do you think the cloud providers will be able to keep up with the additional demands of compute, storage, and security?
I think they will be able to keep up. There's a lot of things within that question, Niall, I would say, and probably one is, you didn't touch on there maybe, is the energy use, actually, in terms of what's required there, which is a big one and a whole topic in itself. But to use the technology, and there's really 4 key elements, and number one of that is actually you have to be in the cloud. So you have to get to the cloud now. And then in terms of establishing a modern data platform, it's understanding your data then within the cloud, how you harness that data and use it in terms of structured data, unstructured data, and synthetic data. So your strategy has to be clear and really understand the implications of what data you put where. And it's really probably going to see organizations using a multi-cloud approach, between private, public cloud, etc. The cloud, public cloud organizations are going to be driving this innovation very quickly now. A lot of the AI innovation is coming from the cloud and the computational power you can harness within it. So you got to be there to use that, right? So getting into cloud's key. Your modern data foundation, absolutely key. There's going to be new versions of applications that are coming out, and that's the third point. So as you talk about driving that innovation, to be able to rapidly access and upgrade to those new versions, you're going to have to be able to do that in as seamless way as possible, and being in the cloud is a big part of that. And then the digital backbone, the Gen AI digital backbone to enable that. So I think it's one of the things that organizations are going to really grapple with now. What we have seen within the industry, I would say, is that, here in Ireland, potentially we've been slower to adopt on the journey to cloud. It has happened at different levels of maturity within different organizations, for sure. We're now seeing that pace picking up, and that's being driven by the Gen AI. So there's no doubt that you have to do it, whether it's public, private, whatever way you're going to access that capability. And I think then it's coming up with then what is the way in which you can do that responsibly and in a safe way to build trust between employees or users, etc., to do that effectively.
And that was Austin Boyle, the head of technology at Accenture, talking to Niall Kitson.
This is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
That's it for our show this week. Just before we go, we've got some more stories online on the website we didn't get a chance to talk about today, including, Niall.
Yeah, we got a Russian misinformation campaign targeting the Olympic Games. We have the bankrupt crypto exchange Mt. Gox. Remember that? It has apparently started paying back its creditors in Bitcoin, which might be a fantastic idea. And when and how companies should automate their cybersecurity.
You will find those and more online at techcentral.ie. Of course, we're back again next Friday with a brand new show online and with RTE Radio 1 Extra. And do remember to share our podcast with a friend. If they're into tech, tell them to look up Tech Radio Ireland on Apple, Spotify or YouTube. Until next time, from myself, Dusty Rhodes, and from Niall Kitson, as always, take care. Have a great weekend.
Remember, you can get the latest Irish tech news with hourly updates, daily newsletters, and more at our website, techcentral.ie. Share the knowledge and invite a friend to listen. Search Apple, Spotify, or YouTube for Tech Radio Ireland, or listen with RTE Radio 1 Extra. Tech Radio is produced by dustpod.io for techcentral.ie. From me, Artemis, live long and prosper.